Emotional eating or stress eating is probably one of the most frustrating things when it comes to weight loss or just eating habits in general. But lucky for you, you know me, and I'm going to teach you how to overcome emotional and stress eating in 3 easy steps. Now, if you're new here, welcome. This is Ask Nutrish Mish, where we go over your top nutrition questions and answer them so that you can live your healthiest life. My name is Michelle. I am founder and owner of Nutrish Mish, and we've helped over 10,000 people lose weight and keep it off by changing their eating habits. So if you ever come home from work, you've eaten so well all day, and now you're dealing with the kids' homework or you're doing dinner or whatever, and now it's after dinner, right? You're finally able to relax, you're watching TV, and then you're like, you know what? I could really use a snack. And then one snack goes into 2 and 3 and 4, and before you know it, you've eaten way more than you wanted to. And this is a pattern that happens every single night, no matter how much you want to stop. Or it could also happen mid-afternoon. You might have gotten through lunch. You're like, oh my gosh, I still have another 3 or 4 hours left in my work day. That kind of sucks. I'm gonna go to the vending machine. That will make it suck less. These are all examples of emotional eating or stress eating. And the problem is, no matter how much you try not to do it, white knuckling it or relying on willpower isn't a good strategy long term. So what happens is you have all these great expectations for yourself of how well you're gonna eat today, and maybe you eat well all day long, but then you're feeling like you're blowing it at the end of the day because you're emotional eating or stress eating. And no matter how hard you try, it's really difficult to stop. So here's what happens when you're struggling with emotional eating or stress eating. Now, the one caveat to this I will say is sometimes I see people that come in and they're just not eating enough during the day. So they're actually hungry during at night because they haven't eaten enough during the day. So if this is you, this is not necessarily triggered by an emotion. It's just I don't eat enough during the day and now I'm really hungry at night. That's a totally different story. But if you're somebody that comes home and it's triggered by an emotion, and the emotion doesn't necessarily have to be sadness. I'm not necessarily saying you're crying in your Ben and Jerry's. I'm saying it could be something where you want to decompress, or you're bored, or it's just a way that you're trying to reward yourself at the end of the day. Those are all emotions. So it doesn't just have to be sadness or stress necessarily. So the first thing you have to understand about emotional eating or stress eating is that, believe it or not, it has actually nothing to do with the food. What you're experiencing is a habit loop, and what you're looking for is the dopamine hit that you get from food. So the first thing we want to do is you want to really understand, okay, well, what is a habit loop and what does that mean? So when we're breaking down a habit, right, you can't technically break habits, but you can replace habits. So here's what's happening. There's 3 parts to a habit. There's the cue, which is what triggers the habit. Then there's the habit, what you're doing, and then there's the reward. So in this case scenario, you have the emotion, right? So the first thing you want to do is you want to know what your emotions or what your triggers are. Is it that you're trying to decompress at the end of the day? Is it boredom? Is it sadness? Is it stress? What are the emotions that can come in that can trigger you to want to stress eat? Then what happens is you're eating, and then your body is looking for that reward. So in your brain, you're always going to have that cue, and when you have that cue, your brain's always going to be seeking out a reward. But we can teach it to get that reward through a different pathway. It's sort of right now, you probably know your way to work so well, so you can get in your car and you can drive without thinking about it. It doesn't mean that we can't teach you to learn to go another way to work. We just have to consciously think about it. So as long as that need is getting met of that dopamine hit or that reward that your brain is looking for, that's how you start to overcome emotional eating. And knowing that, now it should make a little bit more sense to you why white knuckling it or relying on something like willpower isn't really going to do it, because your brain gets that cue, it's seeking that reward out, and until it gets it, it's not going to stop. That's why eating can almost feel like a compulsion and something that you're totally out of control of. So step 1 is identifying what your triggers are. So what are the emotions that are making you want to eat? So you could figure, okay, if I come home after a long day and I'm stressed out, the emotion that I'm looking for is I'm compressed, I'm looking to decompress. Or it could be something where on the weekend, there's really nothing going on and you're bored. It could be boredom. That could be also the case for work. Let's say it's 4 o'clock, you've already done most of your work, there's still 2 or 3 hours left of the workday, and that vending machine, like I said, will make that day suck less. So you have to kind of know what your triggers are. That's the first thing. Other triggers can be stress, which there's 2 types of stress. It could be something where there's an unresolved stress, I'm stressed out and I don't know when this is going to get resolved, or an acute stress, meaning someone annoyed you or pissed you off really quickly and that stressed you out, but then it's over, it's resolved. So it could be stress, either acute or chronic. It could be boredom. It could even be happiness. Sometimes we reward ourselves with food. Oh my gosh, I had this really great day. You know, it would make it better. Carvel. Things like that. So you want to know what all the emotions are that could possibly trigger you. So that's the first thing that you want to pay attention to. For most people that I work with, they're looking to decompress, and I would think the second one that I see most common is boredom. Those 2 things are emotions. Like I said, it doesn't necessarily have to be sad crying in your Ben and Jerry situation. It could be just something where it's a little bit more of a benign emotion, but still an emotion like boredom or the need to decompress. So now that you know what your triggers are, right, the next thing that you want to do is you want to think of replacement things. Now here's the thing. I want you to understand, you have built up food food on a pedestal over the course of time. So any replacement thing that you choose is not going to seem as exciting as food is right now. So I'm not necessarily suggesting that you're like, oh, I really like to eat. That's going to be the same as going for a walk. No, we have to find replacement things that are actually going to do it for you, that are actually going to trigger a little bit of a dopamine hit. But again, they're not going to feel as good as food, but just like bear with me. The trick is that the action that we're going to take has to fulfill the need of your emotion. So for example, I had a client once who her trigger was boredom, right? So she was like, well, every time I'm bored, I look for food. So I'm going to do laundry. Now, for her, that was a terrible replacement thing because like food is fun and like laundry's not fun. For some of you weirdos out there, you guys might love laundry. Like, God bless you. I'm not one of you guys. I wish I was. But unless laundry and organizing and things like that are fun for you, that would not necessarily be a good replacement because for her, food was fun and it also satisfied the boredom. Laundry wasn't cutting it. So we know what your triggers are. So now what can be some possible replacement things? So I'm actually going to put in the show notes, I'm going to have a downloadable that you can download, and it's going to have a whole list of different ideas of replacement things you can do. And you can have levels of them, right? So it could be something, let's say you're going to have a really stressful week. At the end of the week, you can schedule a massage, a manicure, something really like special for yourself. But if it's like more of a nighttime one, that's not something you could do at like 10 o'clock at night necessarily. So it could be something like, you know, if you're a parent and you're crazy and you don't ever get time for yourself, it could be as simple as like locking yourself in your bedroom, being like, mommy needs like a half hour or 15 minutes, and like getting that alone time that maybe you're needing. It could be a self-care routine. It could be something where you are messing around on social media, like get yourself into a TikTok hole. Like I do that all the time. That TikTok, believe it or not, it does trigger a dopamine hit, but you want it to be something where you're actually enjoying it. Now, for some people, I've noticed that when you're like a caregiver personality type, a lot of times you don't think about what your needs and what your wants and what your likes are. So people who are the caregiver personality types, I find really struggle with emotional eating because a lot of times you've never actually thought about, well, what do I enjoy? What do I like? What makes me happy? And food is an easy one for you because it doesn't affect other people. So for some people, when they're thinking about this, it's almost uncomfortable because they're like, I don't have any hobbies. I don't know what I like. I don't do arts and crafts or whatever it is, that you don't have anything that like, you know, is your kind of thing that you enjoy doing, you know, when you actually have the time to do it. So if this is the first time that you're actually thinking about it, it might be a little bit interesting to you to be like, oh my gosh, like I actually do enjoy just like messing around on social media, or I do enjoy playing these games, or I do enjoy like, I don't know, knitting, crocheting, whatever your things are, reading. But I think it's important that you have a couple things that are your own, because if you're relying on food, that could be a sign that you don't have enough things to trigger dopamine outside of food that are, you know, things that you actually enjoy doing. Mine is kind of funny. So I would get a dopamine hit from shopping, right? Shopping also would definitely trigger a dopamine hit. I can't do that all the time because I would go broke. But what I noticed is I don't necessarily have to buy things. I just like picking things out. So it's so weird. So what I do, I've coined it online fantasy shopping, where like if I'm just like having a stressful day and I just want to decompress, I'll go online and I'll like put things in my cart. The key is you do not hook up your credit cards. But then, you know, just the act of like picking things out to me is kind of fun. So like you can have these like weird little things, but I'm going to have this whole list linked below. So if you need some ideas, you need some inspiration, click that link below, download the PDF, and it'll give you a whole bunch of ideas. But it's important to kind of know what are some things that I might like or I might enjoy doing in lieu of the food. You need to have those things available to you. Otherwise, you're just always going to seek out the food. So now we know what your triggers are, right? We know a couple replacement strategies. Now, just because you know what possible replacement strategies are, what this doesn't look like, it doesn't look like, oh my gosh, I've come home, I'm really stressed out, I want ice cream. Ice cream would make me happy. I'm going to read a book. I just read my book. Michelle, you cured me. Now I don't want ice cream anymore. That is absolutely not how it works. Remember, we have food up here, right? And we have whatever this replacement thing is down here. We need to take some time to knock food down and build something else up. So the way the process looks is you're going to come home, you're going to want to eat. Take 15, 20 minutes before you eat, and I want you to do your replacement thing first. What we're teaching your brain is we're teaching your brain to get that need met in another way. After 15, 20 minutes, revisit the food. You're still going to eat the first couple times, but what you might notice is you'll probably eat less because we're breaking that knee-jerk reaction of emotion in food. And we're not telling you that you can't have it. My suggestion is if you're still trying to lose weight, maybe take inventory of how much you're eating right now and just try to do a little bit less of it. So that way you can still get the benefit of like losing weight and making forward progress while you're learning this whole process. And then what you'll notice is you'll still eat maybe the first half a dozen times. And then maybe like the seventh time though, you'll go to eat and you're like, I don't really want it. And then the 8th, 9th, and 10th time, you know, you might still eat, but then the 11th, 12th, 13th time, you won't. So you'll start to notice this fade. You're gonna start to get this need met in other ways, so you're gonna be relying on the food less and less and less. And that's how habit loops work. You can't break a habit, but you can replace it with something else, but it does take repetition. So this was like the SparkNote version of what to do when you struggle with emotional eating. And for a lot of you guys, like this will be enough, just like a brief overview and understanding it. But for a lot of you, it might not be enough. And this is something that we specialize in at Nutrish Mish. So if this is something that you struggle with, I highly, highly recommend. Click the link below. I'm gonna link out a link to sign up for our first session with us, and we can help you work through some of this stuff. We can hear where your personal struggles are, and we can really tailor it to you specifically. So if this was enough for you and you're like, oh my gosh, I get it, you're awesome, go about. But if you need that little bit of extra help, highly, highly recommend getting to the root of the problem and solving for this problem, because if you're trying to do emotional eating on your own and you can't do it, having the help of somebody else will help you get there so much faster and with a lot less aggravation. I hope you found this helpful. If you did, make sure that you're subscribed so you never miss a video, and check out some of our other videos, and don't forget to follow us on social media.